Our next conversation is all about buying cash-flowing businesses. And really, this conversation is for anyone who's ever asked, could I actually own a business without starting one from scratch, right? Obviously, we've heard a lot about entrepreneurship. We've heard a lot about things in terms of, how we can exit our companies, but what about buying a company? KK Hart is an entrepreneur, strategist, and the proud owner of over 10 companies. That's right, 10. Across industries, including beauty, wellness, service, and e-commerce. She recently acquired Ghost Democracy, which you guys will all experience in your gift bags, a clean skincare brand, and has reviewed hundreds of deals throughout her career, if not thousands. She doesn't just talk about ownership. She builds real wealth through strategic acquisition, helping others go from operator to owner by aligning their skills, life stage, and vision with the businesses that already flow cash. This conversation is about learning to see like an insider, how to assess value, structure smart deals, and step into ownership with confidence. Please welcome the incredible KK Hart. You look fabulous. You too. All right, have a seat, love. I have you right here. Yes, I have you right here. Okay, so let's just jump right in.
Let's do it.
You look fabulous, and you're running 10 companies.
Yeah.
So
no pressure.
And you have children.
Yes.
So all of those things. So I'd love to start with, everyone's, I think, this entry point into buying a cash flowing business is really unique. I hear so many female founders that are like, I'm building this from scratch. I'm going to start this from the ground up. But you go in and assess these opportunities. How on earth did you get interested, curious, and then emboldened to start to make acquisitions?
Gosh, okay. Start with the good question. Fantastic. Hi, everyone. I think my first thing I would want you to know is probably what rooted my money decisions, which was immigrating here from a tiny third world country, watching my mom kind of battle her way through a horrific divorce, life circumstance. And then knowing that there was like this one thing in my life that I always felt like I did well. I was quite resilient, quite always the glass half full. And I am brazen by nature. I don't know where that one comes from. But what ended up happening is every time I got overlooked for an opportunity, I am literally the one that would create the opportunity. So like something happens right now, everyone's running out the door, I'm scaling the frickin' building. It's just a natural skill set. What I want you to know, can I just be like a coach for a second, is that you are here with me. Envision yourself up here with me. Because I think what no one ever gave me permission to do is what I want to do for you today, and is to know that you have a strength inside of you. You have something that maybe you're not leveraging for yourself. Maybe you're making someone else a lot of money right now, right? And you're trading time for money. And I would say my start to this was honestly wanting to forge my own path, only because everybody else had overlooked me for all the opportunities. So that's my starting off point. Not a great one, looking back, by the way, but understanding that I had this one thing I always say I do really well, which is that I'm ridiculously fiscally conservative. And so I'm real good with money. I kind of always have been, mostly because scarcity was like a life experience for me. What I think it was never even in my dreams, was that I could be good with money in that I would work hard, I would earn, and I would put it aside and just have it annoy me in the bank. And that started very young, very early, and got to a point where I think I really realized my last big failure in that area was personal, and I decided to double down on the professional and start acquiring businesses because I had no other choice.
So how old were you, and how much was your first company that you purchased?
Yeah, so this is a unique situation. I was 26. Wow. I had been in business for 6 years already. I graduated college early. I graduated high school with enough credits to graduate college, started college, realized I could end early. Always thought to myself, I need to be in business. I can't tell you why, but I can tell you for sure, everyone that I had seen that was successful, I grew up in a very wealthy, affluent area, and I was from the other side of the tracks, and all the girls I did cheer with, their dads were like titans of industry. And I guess for me, that just seemed like the only path to success. There was no cushion. There was no, if something goes wrong, mom's got my back. She didn't have it to give. And so I guess that really is the start of the story, which is like, I'm really good at business. I'm really good with money. I started at 20, which was insane. And then the money kept bothering me because it was just sitting there in the bank. The rest of my life, by the way, was a hot mess. I always say before I met my husband, I was a hot mess express personally, but I was very rigorous with owning, operating, and kind of helping other people unlock their growth and their wealth. And I think that first opportunity was just, you guys, I had to do it.
Well, what was the first opportunity?
So that first opportunity was, I was fresh on the heels of an emotional heartbreak, and I had been dancing at a fitness studio, like just to build myself back up. I had decided, this is so sexy, I Googled how to buy a business. There you go. And I found that business accidentally, realized that it may have been that. I inquired. I strategically negotiated. I funded my own loan with my own money, collateralized, acquired that business for about $300,000 of my own money cash.
Wow.
It's a weird first opportunity, I will say.
I mean, but also like a bold and courageous move for a young woman who's, out there trying to strike out on her own. What were some of did you have at all, and the answer might be no, any fears about taking all this cash, putting it into something? I imagine at that point you had not run a business like that, I assume.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I had been building other people's businesses. So much of what I do now is just like an iteration of what I've done for other people. I was lucky in that I had just started consulting for what would be a 300 plus franchise group, and I was their head of marketing. So sales and marketing was kind of my entryway into business. And I saw this gentleman do it, and he brought me along for the ride. He was my first client, my best client for a long time when I went entrepreneur. And when I started acquiring, it was the same strategy. It was like, find the things that other people see as weaknesses that you have as a strength, insert yourself into there, and you'll get cash flow. I mean, I hate to say immediately, but pretty close to immediately.
Wow.
So I had seen that through this other person, and I think I was just ready for that person to be me.
I love that. Okay, so the first business was a dance studio. And as far as like being in the weeds, I mean, you now have purchased many businesses. So as far as, being in the weeds of that business, do you still own that business? Did you sell off that company? To me, thinking about renting a dance studio seems like a lot of fucking work. So how did you sort of develop the on the ground thing to like manage these teachers? And like, what was that like to jump into something that was similar to the mindset, but very different in practice?
Yeah, I think that we all have certain strengths. So I'm going to say that again. For me, my strength is that I like to roll my sleeves up. I like to operate. I love to implement. Even now when I consult with businesses, something they would say is like, KK is the only person who ever was smart enough to be an advisor, but also humble enough to fucking do the work. That's just who I am. I would say if you see yourself being an entrepreneur in someone else's business, you've got that too. You got that to be an entrepreneur for your own business. I do have an investment criteria. I did not know that phrase until very recently, but I would say I looked at businesses, and this business made sense because I was already a patron. So every single one of you right now in your handbag at home, you have a business that you have intimate knowledge of as a user, right? That is what makes you a great operator a lot of times. You're your own best practice. You're your own consumer. And so utilizing that, knowing how I found that studio in a very like despondent place emotionally, and watching how it evolved my own confidence at a time when I was not confident, really led me to understand the business enough to take the flying leap, because it is, and it always will be.
Which is incredible. So then how long after owning that business did you say, I'm ready for another business?
Very, very quickly, within a few years. Because I invest all of my own money, for me, it's like I have to look at so many deals to find one that makes sense, because I literally, blood, sweat, and tears went into the money for that business. I actually scaled that business from 2 locations to 4, so I acquired the 3rd and 4th locations, and then I consolidated them for economies of scale and made it very profitable. So that journey took, one asset essentially, double down, more cash, more strategy to expand it, and then essentially contract it to make the profit that I wanted to make, all within about 4 years.
Wow, that's incredible. And so obviously, or not obviously, but your investments have been across a broad spectrum of different kinds of companies. Can you share a little bit about sort of the different kinds of businesses that you've gone into, and then maybe a little bit about this diligencing process? I mean, I get like a P&L is a P&L, right?
Sure.
So you should be able to read it. But obviously, when it comes to some of these nuances or deciding to take on different kinds of risk in these different industries, can you unpack a little bit about what that looked like?
Yeah, I think balance is our friend. And as women, we kind of think about it sometimes negatively. I really like to synergize what I'm doing. So if I'm already making a lot of money in a service business, for instance, those tend to be, very cash positive. I may think about balance with a product-based business. And that's what I did most recently. You'll experience it today, hopefully, with Ghost Democracy. I often will think about having a W-2 income. I had a very high W-2 income. Many of you ladies know this, that means a very high tax bill. And so that tax bill did not feel good that first couple of years. And so I realized I could offset that with stimulating my local economy, buying businesses, helping people with their own journeys and path. And so there's balance, I think, that would be like a great way to think about this. I think sometimes we see people like a Warren Buffett, and he's like, oh, I just do this one thing really well. I want to let you ladies know it's okay to do a couple things really well. Like, I can walk and chew gum at the same fucking time, and so can you.
I love that. And so, when it comes to the different kinds of capital that we need to buy these companies, obviously you're fueling everything with your own cash. Yeah. And you mentioned, this first business was $300,000. Mm-hmm. What's like the small, if someone's like, oh, can I do this with like a lower amount of money?
Absolutely.
Like, what's some of the ranges of investments that you've seen with buying businesses?
I love that there are businesses you can buy with a couple $100s. Those are digital assets, sometimes things like blogs, subscription type businesses. And those are really exciting because there's still so much opportunity. You could start tomorrow. You're not too late. My lowest cost asset's about $30,000. I made that back in about a year. And again, we force appreciation through a couple of things. With this many businesses at this point, I'm always looking for synergies. So I own a sales and marketing agency. I consult from that, but I also leverage that for my businesses. So it kind of instantly provides me an offset in income, a cash flow opportunity, and also a strategic strength.
I think that's so powerful. It's like you're running your own PE firm, right? It's like, and you're synergizing these different companies together, and you're able to like build backbones that really sort of build upon each other. One of the things I know is with a lot of women today who are going through these transitions, right? Like super excelled in like some high-ranking position at a company, and it's like, shit, like I don't want to do this anymore, but I want to not lose, right, what I've done, and I still want to be able to build and create these other forms of income. How do you sort of look at how we can leverage our own sort of expertise and knowledge and ways to apply that into this evaluation process?
I think diversification is the biggest area of opportunity for me. Even now, I love the cash. I love the money just sitting in the bank bothering me, okay? However, doing this for now 20 years, I realize there's like a risk appetite that you can take at certain times. And so I would say looking at it as a 5 to 10 year horizon, what can you afford to lose? What would you like to gain? And kind of staging out your investments. When I started, I was in my 20s. I had no idea where I was headed in life. And so I did a lot of what I would now consider low risk opportunities. I missed a lot of big swings, you guys. Things that I look back and I'm like, dang, I could have invested in that. I was already a user. I already knew it was going to the moon. And then it did without me. So I think understanding your appetite for risk also means understanding like where you are now and have a general idea of where you'd like to end up, because essentially you're going to take some swings and sometimes they don't work out. My biggest failure, no one ever asks me this, is a right-hand jewelry company. It was a right-hand ring company, and I had just timed the market wrong, and I had created that one from scratch. This is why I like to acquire. But what I realized 10 years later is that has fueled the brand for my best acquisition. So like there is no such thing as a bad moment. It's just not the moment that was for you. So I hope that unlocks something for you today.
I think that's really fascinating. And so obviously you mentioned I went on Google, I started looking, I bought this business, but where else do you go? I mean, now I'm sure you see so many deals that get sent your way. I mean, you're not only buying your own businesses, but you're also advising, consulting others on buying businesses. But most of us in this room have not been doing that. And so when it comes to how we think about where to start looking for opportunity, you know, I love the idea. I remember I was on a call with someone, I think it was last year, and I was chatting with her about being on the podcast, and you know, she was telling me about her business, and I went, oh, and I asked her, I was like, do you have an SPV open for your fundraise? And she was like, yes, and I was like, wow, like I went after the opportunity, but it wasn't being offered to me, right? And I went after it. And so when it comes to sort of the ways in which we can start to evaluate and see things and get deal flow, how should we look at this?
Yeah, so I would say 2 stages. One, look for the deals that are already out there. I used Biz Buy Sell and Flippa for a number of deals. But do not be afraid to cold outreach a business that you may just feel like there's something there. You never know where people are at in their stage of business, where their openness may be, and where you can step in with, again, you are already an expert in certain things. And that's some of my favorite acquisitions to date.
You know, I love that. John and I often talk about, you know, all of the boomers who are retiring, right? And like what's going to happen with all their businesses. And not all their businesses are sexy, but they're high cash flowing.
Yeah, my favorite.
Yeah. So when it comes to the non-sexy but highly profitable businesses, do you have any in your portfolio that you think are like, you know what, this was just great for the cash, but it's like not a fabulous skincare brand?
I think there are different uses for different businesses. For instance, sometimes that business will run for 5 years. You'll get all your money back. You'll make extra on top. And then it's like, it's time to be done. No one tells you that. Like, not every business is a 50-year company. So I've had some of those where it's like, wow, we made our money back really quickly. We made a ton of profit afterwards. It's time to do it again. Like,
wow, I love that.
It happens.
It's like staying agile, not being committed to like, this has to be the long game.
Yeah. I think that's a strength that many of us have in life, right? Like something goes wrong and you just kind of pivot, but that's the same for acquiring. Sometimes the acquisition is for, actually I've never said this, sometimes the acquisition is for something that is not the direct asset. I have a background on TV, and so I hadn't used that skill for years. One of the businesses I bought, the owner of it had already like implemented TV expert role. So I bought the business for that, did what I had to do and moved on. Like sometimes it's not the thing you're buying, it's like the thing that unlocks for you, the thing that shifts you to the next stage. And that was amazing. It was so full circle for me. I was a little girl on TV, you know, doing the news in elementary school. And then I always thought that was a path that I would head down, and realized it was not profitable enough for me to do coming from nothing. There wasn't enough money there for me. And then 30 years later, here I was on TV sharing these hot tips from a business I acquired.
That's so cool. I feel like you're unlocking a lot of creative ways of being able to look at this. I mean, I'm super guilty of drinking wine and buying domain names.
Shama has a habit.
Like, is anyone else? Yeah, it's like, this is a great idea. Like, this is a great idea. I mean, you know, I recently had to be like, okay, this is not a good idea. And I need to stop paying $22.99 for this every year.
God, I love it.
But, you know, I feel like there's something to be said about interest, right? Like, what are the things that we're interested in? Obviously, the idea of buying something that's already cash flowing, this idea of it being agile and nimble is great. But what about the bench of people that you need to operate everything, right? I mean, you would think, you mentioned like putting synergies in on the back end, but you know, with 10 businesses across different types of industry, do you have 100 people that you're managing?
Absolutely
not. How are you sort of looking at your operations from your first acquisition to this 10th acquisition?
Well, let me start by saying I never thought I had an investment fund, but now as I've thought about it, I'm like, yeah, emphasis on fun. And so with that, I think the thought process is you need more people, you need more things, you don't want to do much. And I think my thought process is slightly different, so maybe not your path, but I like to roll up my sleeves, but Girly likes to work smart, not hard. So I'm often looking for things that are like very minimal people. Because I have a sales and marketing background, I worked for Big Pharma, don't hold it against me. And so much of that background of behavioral science and understanding why people do what they do is how I'm able to really force appreciation. But I think this is where you can chart your own path. Some people are amazing nurturers and guiders in people, and they may want to have a team. I specifically choose for my fund assets that don't rely on a lot of people, and therefore there's just a different strategy there. I went from brick and mortar to more digital. Again, it's about balance. I love having a little bit of my hands in each aspect of the industries.
And now you find yourself in skincare. So
Yes.
can you tell us a little bit about how this latest acquisition came to be?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I was a client looking for things that, I'm multiracial, so that works for all skin types, tones, and textures, and just had spent about 7 years going down the skincare rabbit hole for myself, wanted to get away from wearing makeup and not feeling confident in my own skin. So I had known about this business, didn't really think much of it. I'm known for cold outreach, so I do like to reach out and kept raising my hand to give advice, and they happened to be incubated by about 15 million in venture capital, but they were ready for an exit, couldn't find it, the timing wasn't right, and so that asset we picked up for much under 1 million because we had cash on the table. This was the area of opportunity that most people don't get access to, which is why I always say get your assets together, because you never know where cash is an opportunity that you're probably thinking about right now. It's sitting in the bank. You want more of it, but you also don't want to deal with the fact that it's not making you any money. And maybe it's not making you money for a year, and then that next year you buy an asset that actually it made sense because you had cash. So that was a very unique opportunity. And because I was a user, I also was able to lend my name, my face, my likeness, because I truly believe in it. So what I didn't expect is I was chosen out of a pool of about 5 to 10 very strategic investors and funds because they wanted this product line to live on with someone who would give it the love it needed and not just ride the cash flow. And what I never expected is that it was a company that was just barely profitable, and we were able to make it very significantly 5 figures profitable every single month from month 3 on. Wow. So there's a lot of opportunity in just putting yourself out there, asking, raising your hand, and not being shy about it, because you all have skill sets and amazing gifts. And I really believe that if you want it, you can go out and grab it. You don't need to ask permission.
I love that. So you just mentioned that the founders were, looking for the right person. This was their baby, right? And so in this position of purchasing companies from people who've built these businesses, and this is their thing, and it's emotional, and there's handing over process and a timeline and all these different components that you have to consider when it comes to, and certainly on your side, you're asking people, hey, I want to buy your business.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all of a sudden, I'm sure someone goes, oh, I'm going to add a few zeros because
Yes.
someone wants to buy my business, and they have no idea what the selling process is actually like or how to evaluate their own companies. And so for you, working with all these founders now, what has that been like, and what are some things you've noticed in terms of diligencing the deals, the timelines and handover process? Does it take 6 months, a year? I mean, what are some of the ways in which you've handled this?
Every deal is different, but I would say some of the most challenging deals are when they weren't prepared for a transition or they weren't smart about the assets. You're kind of taking something that they ran pretty close to the ground, and then you've got to rise it like a phoenix from the ashes. And I've done both. But I would say actually more challenging than that is the founder who they want the cash out, right? They want the money, but they're really, really attached to what was. And then I come in with a fresh perspective that is sometimes hard to bear. They may see it as, she took my baby and she made it better for her. Why couldn't I do that myself? It doesn't always go like that, but sometimes part of the transition process is helping them let go so you can kind of help it become what it is. I was very lucky this last go round. So baby number 10 has been really unique because I think of them if you live with someone in college and then afterwards you're are we gonna be friends after this, right? And they are the greatest friends post-college. They cheer me on. They're oh my God, I saw your article in Forbes. We're so happy for you. So it's been very different this go around. I think they really felt look, they could have incubated a lot more money for it and gone again and, ran it differently, but they were truly happy with it being in a safe space and with someone that they knew would honor the heritage and also make it better.
I love that. You know, one of the things you mentioned, and I want to underscore here, is how you've been able to leverage having cash.
Yeah.
Right? Like cash really feels like, we heard this earlier today in conversations. I mean, liquidity, cash, the ability to do things with your money is so important. You know, as you sort of look at just where you're currently invested with all these different businesses, the revenue streams coming in, what you're holding in cash, do you, when you make a new acquisition, then sort of sit back and reevaluate your portfolio and say, okay, now here is where we are with this new asset that I've purchased, albeit always risky when you're in the business of running a company, right? You only have so much control. So how do you sort of look at managing your financial ecosystem as your portfolio continues to expand?
Well, so I think understanding kind of where you want to be and playing to that versus always just staying where you are. For me, there's always enough, this sounds like a good problem to have, there's always enough money coming in where it's like every year, the damn tax man wants to come. And so it motivates me in a very different way. So I would say that's one element of my financial strategy is always like, okay, I might as well go double down and bet on myself because I don't think Uncle Sam's going to do what I want him to do with this money. And then there's a piece of this where it feels very values aligned, which is something I actually learned from the last Wealth Catalyst Summit. I didn't have words for that before. Thank you, Emily. And now it's like, yeah, I believe in women and I believe in opportunity and I believe in acquisition. I mean, I acquired my children. So I really like taking someone's baby and loving and nurturing them, both physically and in every way. It is just a strength of mine and a desire for me. And so I guess if I wanted to leave you with something, it would be that you can chart your path. I mean, I've certainly done it many different ways. And now my only ethos is this won't kill us. So financially, there's enough inbound and outbound where we're able to kind of be more strategic. And I'm still learning and taking on new risks every day. Since our last event, I've done, I have 3 deals in the making.
What?
Which is a little crazy. And I'm doing more strategic investment, which means sometimes you give capital and skills. And that's actually my favorite thing to do is like businesses raising a certain amount of money, 50% goes to sales and marketing. Boom, I got you. I'll take over the sales and marketing and I'll give you some money. So that's been my new favorite thing to kind of help others get where they want to go faster. Because a lot of times they're spending money on agencies they don't need to spend money on. So there's like a huge area of opportunity there for them and for me. And then we recently became LPs in a venture fund, which was so scary. So I'm still learning from each and every one of you. When I say that you can be here, I really mean it because I don't believe that I'm any better than any person in this room. I think I have a strength that I want to unlock for you, and you better believe you've got one for me. So I hope that makes sense.
KK, what a brilliant and lively and incredible conversation. Thank you so much for sharing.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah.